So you're just bumbling along trying to find Koroks, and then all of a sudden a tree pops up and starts chasing you, and you're like, oh my god, what is going on? Or what was even worse is you're so accustomed to talking to all these NPCs, completing the side quest, and the next thing you know, they're trying to murder you. So today we're going to be talking about the Yiga Clan, and the Yiga Clan is a brand new element in the Legend of Zelda series. The Legend of Zelda series is a very old and rich series that started in the late 1980s. And over time, with each new game, they have added more and more to this franchise in a very positive way. There's lots of different races, lots of different clans and factions, and the Yiga are the latest and newest installment into the franchise as far as like new villains or new people. They did not exist prior to Breath of the Wild. Now, the Yiga clan started out as part of the Sheikah tribe. In Breath of the Wild, we learned that prior to the events, 10,000 years ago, the Sheikah were a tribe of people who were sworn to protect the Hyrulean royal family, and Impa is a member of this tribe. The Sheikah are identified by their eye symbol with the teardrop, and they're very stealthy bodyguards, and they had this advanced technology, the Sheikah technology with the guardians and the divine beasts and the Sheikah slate. And also in each of the shrines, those were Sheikah monks. Prior to the events in Breath of the Wild, we learned that there was some fear surrounding the Sheikah, and people began to be fearful of their powers and their technology. And so there's like a faction that happened. Some of the Sheikah decided to go away into hiding. Others of the Sheikah abandoned their ways and settled a village known as Kakariko Village and just became peaceful farmers, peaceful Hyruleans. And then there was another faction that formed a militant group called the Yiga Clan. And instead of swearing their allegiance to the Hyrulean rulers, instead swore their allegiance to Ganon. And in this case, it was Calamity Ganon. And they felt betrayed by the Hyruleans. And this kind of explains why they are so intent on destroying Link and causing havoc and chaos for the kingdom of Hyrule. Because Link is obviously the chosen hero, Zelda is the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, and so they are wanting to get back at these people who they perceived have wronged them. When the Yiga clan were exiled, they found a hideout in the Gerudo Valley, and they caused a lot of problems for the Gerudo. One of the main quests that you need to do in Breath of the Wild is to retrieve the Thunder Helm from the Yiga clan hideout. And in the game, you also confront the leader of the Yiga clan, Master Kohga. Now, Master Kohga is a goofy little eccentric man, and he has this weird obsession with bananas that he has passed on with his other fellow Yiga tribe members. And this is funny because you can use the bananas to lure them away. I learned that the hard way in that one quest where you have to sneak past the Yiga Blade Masters, and I think I died 5 times before I realized it was a stealth mission. And you can use their love of bananas as like a kryptonite or their Achilles heel. Now, in Breath of the Wild, they play a pretty significant role. They obviously have a role with the Gerudo. They cause a lot of problems in the desert. They cause a lot of problems throughout Hyrule, but their presence in the desert is amplified, obviously, because their hideout is in the desert. And they are very good at disguising themselves. In Breath of the Wild, you would find them disguised as common Hyruleans. And that power has obviously amplified in Tears of the Kingdom. In Tears of the Kingdom, they have mastered the ability to hide even as trees. and they disguise themselves as certain characters in order to trick Link. But in Breath of the Wild, when you first encounter the Yiga Clan, you're like, wait, what the fuck is going on? There's these people trying to kill me. I was just trying to help them. After you successfully sneak past the guards in the hideout, you are confronted with Master Kohga. And at the end, you defeat him and he falls into a chasm. And unbeknownst to most people, myself included, this is setting up for the sequel for Tears of the Kingdom. And we'll get more into Tears of the Kingdom in a little bit. But even after you've defeated Master Kohga, it's interesting because the dialogue changes a little bit in the game. The dialogue now is a lot more vengeful and there's a lot more anger because you defeated their master. One thing that is really important to note is that while they are goofy and kind of serve as a little bit of comedic fodder, the Yiga Clan are deadly. Prior to Link's resurrection in Breath of the Wild, the Yiga Clan became aware that Ganon was about to come, and their sole goal was to eliminate anyone opposed to Ganon, which obviously meant they needed to get rid of Link. So they dispatched spies to Kakariko Village, which was like the last holdout with strong Sheikah ties. One of those spies was Dorian, and Dorian fell in love with a woman in Kakariko Village, and they had 2 daughters, Coco and Katla. And he decided that rather than stay loyal to the Yiga Clan, his family was the number one priority. In retaliation, the Yiga Clan murdered his wife. And this is all something that you can learn in side quests and by talking with these characters when you're exploring Kakariko Village. And they forced him to continue spying as a punishment for abandoning his allegiance to the Yiga Clan. He is the one who kind of alerts the Yiga that Link has returned. And so that's why you don't see the Yiga until you visit Kakariko Village. Once you have visited Kakariko Village, that kind of sets off the chain of events where you start encountering the Yiga all throughout Hyrule. So after you defeat Master Kohga in Breath of the Wild, he falls into a deep chasm, never to be seen again. That is until you play Tears of the Kingdom. And in Tears of the Kingdom, you realize that he has fallen into the depths. In the depths, the Yiga Clan have been able to thrive. And you learn that part of the reason why they're in the depths is because they want to take advantage of the Zonai technology, which fell into the depths as well. You first encounter them when you go to get the auto build ability in the Hyrule Central mine. And then also, as you explore more in Tears of the Kingdom, you realize that they have taken hold of certain prominent landmarks or certain prominent locations scattered throughout Hyrule. And as you complete these quests, you are able to obtain pieces of the Yiga armor. And then once you have all of the Yiga armor, you're then able to disguise yourself as a Yiga and sneak into their hideout. And once you are disguised as a Yiga, you can then see where a lot more Yiga are hiding because they believe that you are one of them. It's actually funny because their behavior will change because they think that you are one of them and they want you to not give up their disguise. They're like, no, don't give away my secret. I'm still waiting for Link so I can ambush him. You can find the 3 pieces of armor scattered throughout Hyrule, and it's like your reward for freeing those people or like freeing that area from the Yiga. Now, the Yiga Clan was also mentioned in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. This game, while not canon, is still an important part of the Legend of Zelda series. And in this game, we also learn more about the Yiga Clan. Now, in this game, there's a little bit more because Age of Calamity takes place prior to Breath of the Wild and explains a little bit more of the backstory of Breath of the Wild. In Age of Calamity, if you haven't played it, all of the champions are still alive. This takes place prior to that big battle in which the champions died. So In Age of Calamity, the Yiga and Master Kohga are again introduced, and they're first introduced with the fight with Urbosa, and they've actually impersonated Urbosa, and this was in an attempt to turn the Gerudo against Zelda. It obviously fails, and you're able to defeat them. And he runs away with the help of his second in command, Suga. Now, Suga is only mentioned in Age of Calamity. A little bit later in the game, we are introduced to a character called Aster, and Aster expresses his disappointment with the Yiga clan. They're not really accomplishing what they were set out to do, what their main objective is, which is, of course, resurrect Ganon and ensure the revival of Calamity Ganon. And this is important because later on, you learn that Aster actually ends up betraying the Yiga clan, and he is the one who then resurrects the Blight Ganons, and you confront the Blight Ganons in each of the divine beasts in Breath of the Wild. In Age of Calamity, the Yiga again are masters of disguise, but this time they disguise themselves again as travelers, but also they'll disguise themselves as Hyrulean soldiers, and even as members of their former tribe, the Sheikah. And Robbie and Purah almost fail at their mission because of this. Now, as far as gameplay, the Yiga clan serve as another antagonizing force that you come across as you're exploring Hyrule. There's a couple of surprise monsters that you come across just to keep you on your toes. The Talus are one of them, and then the other are the Yiga clan. Because they are an unexpected villain, it does create that sense of anticipation and suspense that you always have, and they're quite powerful as well. Their weapons are quite powerful. The Wind Cleaver in Breath of the Wild had a stock damage of 40. The duplex bows were quite powerful bows, and the Yiga foot soldiers were very agile, which made them difficult to defeat, and the Blade Masters were very strong, and you had to be creative in your fighting. It is funny because it became a running joke and a meme of creative ways to destroy the Yiga clan, and people used stasis in all sorts of hilarious ways to get back at the Yiga clan, and so it created a lot of fun internet fodder. And in Tears of the Kingdom, with the ability to disguise yourself as a member of the Yiga tribe, it creates a lot of other fun, dramatic irony. Obviously, they're a carryover from Breath of the Wild, and that creates a lot of strong cohesion, which is great. But they do serve as a primary focus and driving force of the narrative. One of the big ways in which Breath of the Wild differentiates itself from the prior Zelda games is the lack of linear storytelling. A lot of the storytelling is done through memories and flashbacks in the same way that it's done through Tears of the Kingdom. And by interacting with all of the NPCs, you're able to learn more about what's going on. I do think it is interesting that even though in Breath of the Wild, the Yiga clan are relegated to the depths, their hideout is still in the same place in the Gerudo Valley. But this time, in order to enter, you need to obtain all of the Yiga armor. And you can obtain all of the Yiga armor by visiting the Old Man's Cabin on the Great Plateau. They've taken over that. And then by visiting the ancient tech lab up in Akala, they also took over that. And they also have a location in Mount Drena. You can also find the leggings. And then once you have all of the Yiga armor, you can then travel to Gerudo and sneak into the hideout. I do find it interesting. They aren't very smart because if you dye the Yiga armor, you can still sneak into it. I guess they're not too concerned about someone disguising themselves, which I think is interesting because they disguise themselves all the time. So you would think that they would be more aware that people would catch on and disguise themselves in order to infiltrate their base. But I wanted to have a little bit more of a discussion about kind of the juxtaposition that you have with the goofiness of Master Kohga and the goofiness of the Blade Masters whenever they see mighty bananas, with the assassin nature of the Yiga clan, like the deadly nature. Remember, these are the guys that murdered Dorian's wife because he abandoned its way. This is not a happy-go-lucky group of friends that you want to hang out with. These guys are dead set on murdering Link, and nothing is going to come in the way of them doing that. So it should not be understated just how deadly they are. I think it's easy to gloss over the fact that they are a murderous tribe, but they are supposed to be a main antagonist in these series. And it's a uniqueness. It's not just you're fighting the same old Ganon over and over again, or Ganondorf. They've created another antagonist that adds variety into the series. We've seen other antagonists show up throughout the series as well, which adds to a nice variety and richness and fullness in the series. I think series go stale when there's only one main antagonist, because let's be honest, in life, there's no real one bad guy, and they're all motivated by different things, and they have different priorities and different reasons for doing that. And I think because they've spent so much time creating this rich backstory, the Yiga clan have one of the richest backstory as far as like a new element to the Legend of Zelda series. They could have just glossed over everything, but they've given us a lot of backstory and a lot of information, and I think they've done this intentionally, and I think this is because they have big plans for the Yiga in the future. They are becoming a concurrent theme. Now, I was reading in this book, Creating a Champion, that was released following Breath of the Wild. And at the very end, the producer, Aonuma, he talks about the future of the series. This was published in December of 2017. So Breath of the Wild had only been out for about 9 months because it was released in March of that year. But even from then, they knew that they wanted to take the Legend of Zelda series in a new direction. He says specifically, when Zelda first went 3D with Ocarina of Time, there were no rules on how to make 3D games in the way there are now. And it was my first time making a Zelda game, so in a real sense, I had no idea how to properly create a 3D Zelda game. At the time, we had a blank slate. We would think of something, try it, and if it didn't work, do it over. Breath of the Wild was similar. It was a type of game that didn't have defined guidelines for development and which none of us had experienced before. So that's, I think, part of the reason why they broke so many of the Zelda tropes that had been established from prior games. And he said very specifically, he said, from the very beginning of this project that I wanted to revise expectations of what makes a Zelda game. With Skyward Sword, the player descended from the sky to specific points on the surface map, and we received a lot of comments from players saying that they wanted to explore the space between the different areas. That gave us an opportunity. We had always aimed to create worlds in the Zelda games that you could play in endlessly, yet at some point we became constrained by expectations. So I told the staff, this time let's build a game without shying away from anything. Let's stop thinking about what Zelda has been up until now. So they're obviously creating this new generation of Zelda games. And I think the Yiga clan is a big part of this, because you don't have the storyline progressing from one point to the next point to the next point, and that you are free to travel the world in any order that you want. You need to have opportunities to confront an antagonist outside of just the main quest. And I think this creates a richer story, and it obviously adds onto the world building that you have. In the real world, you're not going to have just one main antagonist. There's going to be a variety of people and factions doing their own thing based on their own motivations. And the Yiga clan are no different. They are motivated by the fact that they were rejected by Hyruleans 10,000 years prior. This is part of that rich lore world building that the Legend of Zelda series truly excels at. The full immersion that you get when you're in these worlds. You truly feel like you are in another world. It's as rich as the Lord of the Rings series or the Star Wars universe or even the Harry Potter world, where there's so much attention to detail, so many little things. There's history, there's backstory, there's betrayal, there's murder. All of these things contribute to create that rich story. If you just had a surface level antagonist, you would end up with the Mario games. By creating multi-level dimensions that span several games with deep lore that you can only find by interacting with all of the characters and all of the different characters in the game, that is what creates this whole rich, amazing experience that we have in video games. And so I think that they have big plans, that they're already going to be planning another Zelda game, especially following the success of these last two games. They have been amazing successes. So I don't think that this is the end of the Yiga clan. I believe that we're going to be seeing more and more of them. I'm curious to see how their interactions with Pura continue. Because we've now defeated Master Kohga twice, I'm curious, are they going to get rid of Master Kohga, or are they going to keep him around, continuing like something to bind the games together? I will say they did advertise Tears of the Kingdom as a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and a lot of people became frustrated that there is a lack of Sheikah like technology scattered throughout Hyrule. There's no guardians. The Sheikah were such a strong part of Breath of the Wild's story. There's very little mention of the Sheikah in Tears of the Kingdom. The one big continuity from the storyline, like the one big thing tying these two games together, is the Yiga clan. We learned more about them in Age of Calamity, and now we're learning more and more about them in Tears of the Kingdom. So I do believe that this is where the Legend of Zelda series is going. We are going to be seeing more of this kind of this storyline from the continuation, like the 10,000 years Age of Calamity with the Sheikah and the Yiga clan. Let me know what you guys think about the Yiga clan. Do they serve a bigger purpose as far as storytelling, linking this new generation of Zelda games together? Or is it just a funny way to keep players on their toes? Let me know what you guys think. If you guys want to stick around for more gameplay commentary, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time.